advance. Senator Warner from Virginia is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me also welcome our new members as well. I'm not going to ask a question on my first comment. This is much to share. I would like to share with all of you. We'll send you some materials and from my colleagues. I mean, lots of indications about the racial wealth gap in this country, particularly between black households and white households. Last Congress, we had I think, a relatively innovative approach that said, let's look at first-generation, first-time home buyers. By definition, that's about 60% roughly people of color. And if you qualify for that traditional 30-year mortgage and you fit into this category, you'd have to start at a relatively small basis. Rather than giving you a 30-year mortgage, we'll give you a 20-year mortgage and the payment schedule will be based on 30. So it's a indirect subsidy. But what it does for that first-time home buyer is it literally allows them to accumulate equity at almost twice the rate, just the plain math at a 10-year basis. And I think as we think about wealth gap, creating that equity in an attainable manner is, I think, at least part of the solution, number one. Number two, and I want to get a quick response, I've got a third question, or third point I want to make is, I'm a big advocate around tax credits along the supply side. I think everyone you've all mentioned, we have really a huge supply issue, particularly for affordable housing, low and moderate income housing. So I've supported, LIHTC, new market tax credits. Actually, Senator Portman and Senator Cardin had a really interesting initiative, new neighborhood homes investment tax credit. How do you go at that housing stock that in distressed communities, and we've got them all, every one of us have got some of those, and that could rebuild that structure or fix it up to code. In many cases, the equity may not be enough to refurbish that building, but what can we do along the tax credit range to take these or other initiatives and really target it to those communities most in need? And I'd ask relatively brief responses, so we'll go down the line.
Senator, I would second that endorsement for the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act that would close the gap between what it costs to build housing and the market rate. And it's necessary to prime the pump in these areas where demand has fallen. So I think that's an incredibly important use, both for rehab and new construction. So I would just second that.
Yeah, consider expansion and refinement of the low-income housing tax credit. It is the most successful production program for improving rental affordability. On the homeownership side, consider taking the now modified mortgage interest deduction after the 2017 Tax Reform Act and converting it into a broad-based homeownership credit that can be claimed whether you're an itemizer or not. That would help on the homeownership side.
Interesting suggestion.
Thank you, Senator. As we noted in our testimony, there's a dearth of good quality rental housing in many rural communities. So production at any level, the tax credit is one of the largest rental production programs in the United States. It doesn't work as well in some rural communities for various reasons. I'm not an expert on that, but I would just say we need production in rural America of any scope. Thank you.
And I strongly support all three of these. And Mr. Chairman, I tell you, I think there's a number of our colleagues on the Republican side that are interested on this supply issue around the tax credit, and I'd welcome folks like our new colleague to join in that discussion. One of the things that a lot of folks from the traditional civil rights community have always advocated for as well is down payment assistance. I'm not sure that's going to take place with the current makeup in the House. So one of the things I've been trying to explore, and again, I'll throw it out, would like your quick responses, but if we could get a longer response, is And as we think about how we keep, healthcare workers in rural communities, for example, I'm interested in the idea of giving an appropriate incentive for an employer to provide a tax-assisted down payment assistance that might, to that employee, come in on a tax-free basis. Help with that down payment, help retain that workforce. Have any of you done any work around employer-based tax credits in terms of down payment assistance?
Senator, I have not, although I have certainly heard of employers who are struggling to get employees into their markets. Most of the initiatives I've heard have been focused on the rental side, but I think that adapting this for the home ownership side would have a lot of benefits as well. So I think employers have a need and an incentive to participate.
And our research has tended to focus more on the supply side, but where employers get involved in the housing market is making sure that builders in those markets can construct and add supply to the marketplace because they know they don't want to expand to markets where housing's not available.
Thank you, Senator. I would only agree with the other two commenters and also note that we hear anecdotally to some degree that businesses that want to move into rural communities don't have a good supply of housing across the spectrum for low, moderate, and
But if
higher
we could
income.
combine that supply with some of our existing tools, but also with some level of down payment assistance, you've got a great retention tool. You have a benefit to workers in distressed communities. And I'm going to do some work on this, Mr. Chairman, and would love to work with you and others on both sides of the aisle to explore this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Warner.